So yeah, Mark Oskowitz. Yeah, it's been a long time since I've taught this as a class, but it's definitely one of my passions. Like creating soil blocks is one of those things that like I read about, and then I was, you kind of like, what's the word? You kind of fall in love with it, like with the idea, but like sometimes it's just easier to put like dirt in pots and stuff like that, and like time. It takes a little bit of time, takes a little bit of dedication. But then when I first got my like first set of soil blockers, and I just like saw how easy it was. That's it. That's all I've been doing is using soil blocks for more than 10 years now. I did it when our farm was like a farm. We were growing food for a CSA, and then now as we've like scaled back and we no longer grow food for people, and I just go around and I teach stuff. I just do it for my own like personal use, and these are the same soil blockers that like I bought like 12 years ago, like when my daughter was born, like, and they're still doing their thing. They make noises, but yeah. So okay, so we got this like hybrid of like pictures and everything, and that's for putting this together. I wanted to make sure that there was like enough pictures for people who weren't here in person where they could kind of see stuff up close in post in the recording. Yeah, but then again, like you're here, so I also want to like make stuff with you. I have the farm scale tools. I don't think that the home gardener is going to be buying these. They're like, oh my God, we'll get into it. So I'm a flow state of mind person when I teach. I keep my eye on the clock, but each picture kind of like triggers something. There we go, there we go. Oh yes, I teach a bazillion other classes. This is always the shameless promotion slide of like, yes, I teach classes, some are pre-recorded, some are already recorded at, Groton's YouTube channel. Watch them for free. Yes, so working this slide in, the idea of permaculture and organic methods and everything, soil blocks fits within this. And actually, like the first place where like I saw soil blocks was in Elliot Coleman's The New Organic Grower. So this book is one of the foundational books for organic farming. But it's also a book that like the home gardener can pull so much from, because it's like a whole system approach. So I bring this book. I don't get to bring this to like all my classes, but this book is the book that I learned how to do soil blocks from. And it has like suggestions for like what size block to use for different types of crops and a little bit of the, like the timing and everything. So along with the presentation, which you all get, there's also like a digital handout, which has like links in it. And so feel free to take notes, but like all the good stuff is also like typed out for you. And there's links to where to get the book, this book, that book, all these tools. And there's links for like the different types of, you guys get it? The digital version is awesome because, well, I made it. Okay, you're welcome. Okay, so, so some books. Okay, so, I mean, when we ran the farm, we were like organic certified and everything. And that like takes a lot. Like the stuff that you buy in has to be certified organic, and then you have to like use it in a certain way. I think where soil blocks fits in this is that you are controlling you're controlling your potting mix. You're controlling what you're starting in, putting in your garden and growing with your food at the very first like step, which you of course can do like with plastic culture, using the plastic cells and everything. There's nothing, you can still do that organically. All right, anyway, let's see. Yeah, that decay and everything. The idea of working compost into this mix, into our potting mixes, is another one of those things. All right, so we got pictures. Okay, yes. All right, so grow lots of things. And like nearly everything that I grow, like could start in plastic trays. That's the early days. And like little vacuum, I had a vacuum seeder and everything where I'd like vacuum flip it. Oh, that's super efficient. But then moving away from plastic, moving away from like, the thing with running a small farm is that costs add up. And even like the home gardener, costs add up. And like making that like connection to food justice and everything, having a set of tools that like a local area has and like loans out, like the library of things. Like if every library just had like a set of these tools as a library of things and people could just check them out for the weekend, the 3 days, do their potting stuff and then put them back. I think part of doing a class like this makes it so that people might want to request because do I use these like every day? No. I use these like a couple times a year intensely. And then I do all my like little seedlings and then I'm done with it. Anyway, all of this stuff like costs like money and it like adds up. And so with soil blocks, it's like, yeah, so here's, yes, from my Instagram or whatever. So, because where else do we keep our pictures? Look at that. That's a red wiggler worm. That's like a little composting worm that's in the mix. I don't know if it moved its way into the soil block from the greenhouse floor or if, but the greenhouse floor is like on pallets and everything. So like that's like a, worms do crazy things. We see them in our parking lots, okay? So but it could have also been like a little egg casing of a worm that was in the compost that I mixed in. My point with this one picture is that those Swiss chard plants are growing in a potting soil that's alive and that is mimicking like natural processes. And it's not rocket science. With this little tomato plant, and then you've got like the rootlets like at the edge of the block. Have you ever like bought a potted plant and the roots are wrapped around? Yeah, it's like pretty much every tomato that you buy from, the garden centers, they will grow because they're tomatoes. They will grow, but like there's going to be a hesitation from those root-bound transplants to branching out and growing new roots into the soil. While soil blocks, those roots are right at the edge, and as they grow to the edge of the soil block, they hit the air, and the roots are, I forget the technical term, but like when they hit air, they stop growing because they've run out of, you know what I mean? When they hit too much air, they dry out and they prune. It's called air pruning when they hit the edge of the block. So instead of growing out and then around the container, they grow out and then they stop that growth and they branch out. And it becomes a dense, packed set of roots that when you put them in contact with the soil, yeah, there's a bigger block. So that's when I used to use the bigger blocks. I will say this thing, it's a pain in the butt. No, I don't think I don't want to make these size blocks. If something needs to get into a container this big, I'm okay using pots that are reusable or just putting it in the garden. But I used to. Remember my passion in the early days? That's like a $200 tool. This is like $35, $40 or so. So like there's a big difference. So in the whole scale of things, I think most people, it's like the home gardener just needs this and you're good. And then like you get into it and you're like, I want that one. Why? It's a little bigger. The seedlings can stay in there a little longer. So just like picking out different size cells, different size plastic cells, like the 806s and stuff like that, well, boom, you've got like a larger growing space for your plants. Okay. All right, pictures, oh my God. Okay, you can make mini blocks. Why? When you make little mini blocks like this, you put like little tomato seed here, a little tomato seed there, a little tomato seed. Why? Because the little packet of seeds might have like 30 tomato seeds in it. That's it, come on in. This is your class. Okay, it might have like 30 seeds in it, and you paid $4 for that little pack of seeds, and you want all of those seeds to like do their job and germinate. So you create a tiny little micro environment, and look at this. It's like, so this little blocker, it's 4 by 5. There's 20 little seedlings and so here's the thing. If you mess up and these don't sprout, you're not wasting a huge area on wherever you're growing. It's just this tiny little area. Plus you could also do you could do your jalapeno peppers here, you could do your Brandywine tomatoes, and then you could do so you could start like those careful little seedlings and get them going. And when they're growing, then you could pot them up. I'm also kind of lazy, so I kind of don't do this anymore. So what do I do this with? With the ones that I said, tomatoes, peppers, eggplant, that nightshade family are the ones where it's actually worth doing the mini blocks and dialing in and creating a little microclimate. We'll talk about, I do use some plastic, but strategically. Okay, but creating a little microclimate for germination. Wires. Okay, mini blocks. So as I was thinking about the mini blocks, oh, look at that. Mini blocks go into the larger blocks. It's amazing. So this is an example of what I will do with peppers. Those are little pepper seedlings. Why? Because peppers do need a longer time to grow, and they need a longer time to germinate. And so all of that stuff might take longer before we're here in Connecticut and we can have that Memorial Day weekend where it's finally warm enough to put stuff outside. I know you guys, you're down here in Mystic, I know. You get your warm springs a little sooner than I do in Colchester. But these are warmth-loving plants. I don't know if you know that the tomatoes and peppers and all, they're like perennial plants when they're grown down south, way down south. You know, like if you have a place that doesn't have a winter, you can actually take these plants inside in the winter. And I had a friend, my friend Henry, who had his habanero plant and his jalapeno plant for like 5 years. And then he got aphids and they died, and he was all really sad because he kept them alive for 5 years in his house and then outside, and in his house and outside. All right, tiny stories. Remember flow state of mind, folks? Okay, some of this is scripted and some of it's like, well, my brain just went there. Okay, bump, bump, bump. Okay, so like the company that originally made these tools is Ladbrokes, and they're still making the company. Remember, everything's linked in the resources, okay, for this class. And this is one of their pictures that you could go from this to, and you see how like this one at the bottom has like little blocks in the bottom versus like little plastic, like dibbles and everything. I tend to just like love using this one because whether I'm putting seeds in or not, I tend to like this size just because it gives me the flexibility to put in the mini blocks or to just put seeds in and just cover them up. All right, so, but it already makes and presses, it dibbles a little hole for you to set your seeds in. And then, okay, yes, pictures, pictures, plants in the ground, cilantro, a big old hunk of herbs. So like this is how I'm growing my herbs and my veggies and my flowers. The things I'm not growing in soil blocks are the things that you just wouldn't grow in transplants anyway. So like carrots. Carrots have this like huge taproot that as soon as the seed germinates, the taproot just goes down. And if you ever want to make like little carrot people like you see on Instagram, well, go ahead and do the carrots in transplants or in little soil blocks. That taproot hits the bottom like it would hit a rock in the soil. And then that taproot's like, I don't know where to go. And it goes this way and that way, and you got legs. And then, and when I taught this class with middle schoolers, I'd be like, do you guys want to make little carrot people? And we would intentionally plant carrots in this so that we get short little fat carrots with legs and other things, okay? So okay. And yeah, you get all the laughs from the middle schoolers. Oh, I found one. Okay, tools, okay. So you're seeing the tools live here, but then also remember, so you're gonna see a mix. So at first, it's like a die-hard organic farmer, super crunchy. I was like, I'm not using plastic. No, I'm not going to. And I would like make like little wooden trays and everything. And here's what I found, is that wooden trays are harder to clean, and I would get fungal rots that would transfer from one year to the next. Because remember, these are, and so I am not stopping anybody from doing wooden trays. Go ahead and do it, but I would actually suggest that we need more air circulation. So this is a picture I just stole from online, but it's a picture of one where I want to say, this little box, I think there's improvements that we could make. Maybe it just has an end wall and no side walls to allow more air circulation. Maybe it's just a flat piece of plywood. Maybe it's just a flat board. And that flat board, it just holds the blocks, and then you water, whatever, and then you can like bleach it at the end. So I do use, and that's an example of somebody whose blocks are not sticking together. So when I look at this, it could be that they didn't put enough pressure when they made their blocks, or it also could be that the mixture didn't have enough gluey stuff. And so we'll get to my mixture. Time check. Good, okay. Okay, anyway, there are successful people that do, also, whatever. All right, so I do tend to use the plastic culture trays. These, I bought one case of like 50 trays, again, like a dozen years ago, and I've been using that same case of trays. If you go to your garden center and you buy transplants anyway, you probably have some of these trays at home. So I have stuck with using these trays year after year because of the problems with the wood part of things. Do you guys get where I'm going? There's a balance. Like I am saying that we can get away from using most of the plastic, but I am saying that there could be a strategic use of it. especially with the fact that I could take a whole bunch of these trays, put them in my big old wheelbarrow, fill it up with some water and like, you know, like a couple of tablespoons of bleach and like disinfect them and then hose them off and everything so that the next round of seedlings the next year are starting off in nice re-cleaned trays, but I'm not buying them over and over. Okay, blah, 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 blah. Trays like this, they're harder with soil blocks. So what you could do, so back to props. Oh no, I don't have one. But anyway, if you see that type of tray, that's a protective tray. That's a tray that's made to protect your grandma's kitchen table that you're trying to grow seedlings on. Don't do it, okay? But I've done that. It's a mess. But anyway, like seedlings. Let's be honest. This is like a basement or a garage type of thing, or an outdoorsy cold frame type of thing. But this is typically used like, yeah, sure. You've got a window and you want to grow. That's a poor window for growing seedlings because light is food, my friends. But anyway, let's pretend it's a big old bay window. We're growing these in May and we got plenty of sunlight coming in. This is a standard 10-20 tray that fits inside of that tray. So that as this one leaks, that catches it. That's all it is. That's all it is. So like, whatever. A dome like this fits, yeah, okay, there we go. Pictures of things, oh my God. Okay, again, these like little plastic domes, they're made to fit on top. These are like a buckish a pop. These are like, you know, these are like $3 or $4 a piece. You just need one. Because my rule with seeds starting in the house is I keep this on top until I see some green. Once there's some green, this comes off. Otherwise, it could like rot things. So again, I'm looking at teaching you all like good homegrown veggies and stuff like that, and flowers and herbs. Do you see why like we only need one? Because you're probably only going to be like micromanaging one little tray at a time. One little tray at a time. Oh man. Okay, so he told us not to buy plastic, and then we buy plastic. Again, it's all choices. You can do other ways of doing this. Okay, now we got picture. Again, this is for the folks at home. Ooh, okay, yep. New organic grower, blah, blah, blah. Johnny's, so why do I put this here? Johnny's Seeds. Not a lot of home growing folks know about Johnny's Seeds, but this is what the organic farmers like, where they turn to buy their seeds and to buy their organic, you know, farming tools and everything. If you didn't know about it, like, have fun. You know, this is where I originally got my soil blocks from. I actually called Johnny's up today. Side story, I know, because I work in Old Saybrook. There's a big old greenhouse that's been there for more than a couple decades, and you know, people come and people go. And I have a group of ecology students who want to restart it. And so I called Johnny's up and I was like, hey, we want to do some like grant writing. How much is one of them fancy grow things that you got? And they have like a germination station. It's like $1,300, but it's for education, right? Okay, it's for, okay. Soil blocks, yes, you'll see, I built these little things as like a fun little, what's it called? A craft with students. You got kids at home, go ahead. A little bit of piping, you know, like this is like a little, what is it? Like a little, come on, help me out, I lost my, yeah, it could be like a washer, it could be a big old washer or disc or a little hunk of wood or whatever. And then you got a bolt and a nut and you can have like those little kids pressing out all that. But then again, I'm also like my daughter and my kiddo, like they love doing this. Using the tool. So yes, you can make those little soil blockers. This soil block is going to fall apart. Again, somebody else's picture. Okay, but anyway, because that's from a YouTube video. Not everything that you find on YouTube and Facebook, you all know, is worth your time doing. Not everybody knows what they're doing. Some people make stuff just for the sake of making things. Okay, now, here's the crazy thing. Since I bought my tools way back when, I really debated, should I buy some of the tools that are now new? You see how these are a little different than mine? Because they're now like making these in China. They're like mass producing these, and these are like on Temu, and these are like on, do you get what I mean? Like these are on, this is Amazon right here. So I know this product, and I know that these cost about $40, $45 or so. This is definitely more tempting. So I kind of feel like as the person who teaches this, I eventually have to buy a set. I got to try it out, but I didn't do it for you. I'm sorry. So, okay. But anyway, Ladbrook is the company, and look at the price jump for that one. This is like a little set here. This is so straight off Amazon, but also remember my friend Johnny's, that catalog, not real friend, but that catalog also has it. This is from Johnny's site. So this is like the 5 blocker, $42. Again, why do I have this here? It's just to quickly see price points. So 42, 36, and I know that sounds like a lot, but again, like you and your friends, one person buy this, one person buy this, your cousin, and then, okay, each person borrows these from each other. Like my friend John, he doesn't have these. He borrows them from me. And I love John. Okay, but anyway, he's my gardening, who else has got a gardening geek that's their friend? Please? Yes? No? Oh man, you guys need to get out. You got to, oh, good. I mean, you need people that are like you. You're all here, become friends, exchange information later. Okay, so, well, yeah, you got mine, right, yeah, don't stalk me. But anyway, good. All right, if you get into this for doing, well, you said for New London's program there, for Fresh, yeah. That makes sense that they have something like this because you're going to do a lot. And when I was running my mini farm, this was my favorite one, which is that the 35? I don't know. This doesn't make 35. That one must be even bigger. Oh my God, it's definitely bigger. So this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's math. Okay, so this is a 20 blocker. But like in the scheme of things, let's see, do they have all right, and then we got that big old thing. Look at this thing, 100, oh, so it wasn't 200, it was 111 bucks. It's on sale, folks. Again, I don't think most people need to get this, but this has saved my back in making lots of trays. I never know who's in the audience. I never know who might be somebody who's like, I am going to start an organic farm and grow food locally. It was a write-off, folks. All right, you bought this with money that was coming into the farm, invested in the tool, and you can see by the little bits of rust that this is my favorite one. I do enjoy this one. Anybody want to guess, like, why might I switch and use this one for some things? Why? You got to guess it? Oh, no, I know. Crowd involvement, it's okay. We're on video, so I won't do that. Fine, okay. So I used something that might need a bigger cell. So I actually might grow tomatoes in the mini blocks. I might take the mini blocks and then put them in this, and then I might mush these blocks into that block, even though the hole's not quite the same size. It's soil, it's malleable, it'll work. But what I actually like to use this one for is when I want to dial in my germination, and there was a time when I would put seeds in the garden and mice or something would get them. They wouldn't always germinate. And so I would start things in the greenhouse, or in the basement, and sometimes I would do trays of this for zucchini and squash and stuff like that. And they would only be in the blocks for probably like 3 weeks at the most. So that's like a week to germinate, a couple weeks to develop roots, and then this big old thing goes boom in the ground. And so, yeah, so again, backyard grower doesn't necessarily need that. Was that a question or no? Fixing the hair. Okay, good. Okay, all right. Time check. We're good. Okay, so we got all these things. We got the, oh man, a bazillion types of soil blockers. These are my favorite tools. A double-wheeled wheelbarrow. It's a great investment. If you don't own a wheelbarrow and you're in the market for one, get that one. All right, you will load it up heavier than you can move it, but you won't dump it because you won't tip it over. Standard little garden hoe is what I use for this one, for mixing stuff up. And this is what you're going to see me make, is like, this is typically, I'm only going to be doing a small batch here, but typically I'll use that double-wheeled wheelbarrow to mix up a big batch of potting mix, all right, that is formulated for soil blocks. And it's nothing crazy. This is not rocket science. Anybody can do it. Middle schoolers can do it, okay? And then I dump some of it into here and add water to it, and then mix it up and press these out, either standing up or on my hands and knees, or on a picnic table. Okay, so the mix, okay. Examples. So when you get the handouts, you're gonna see that it doesn't have to be any particular brand. What we're looking for is some sort of bulk mix, bulk potting mix. And I want you to hear that I'm not using the words topsoil. No, not topsoil. I'm not using the words, what's another one? What's another one? Well, anyway, but garden soil. We're not using garden soil either. What's that? Potting soil, sure, potting soil. But I'm not using garden soil. I'm not like digging soil from the garden and using that to make the blocks, because soil in your garden behaves differently when you turn it into that form than when it's like just being in your garden. Garden soil is garden soil. Potting soil for making stuff like this, we actually do want to dial things in, because if we're using garden soil, we could also be bringing in stuff that might cause fungal rots and stuff like that. We are going to add life to this though with compost. That can be your own homemade compost. I've actually moved away from using my own homemade compost in this, just for the sake of consistency. So this is I know I brought in a bag of, this is not just compost, but it's a mix, it's a blend of compost and potting soil. So this has compost already mixed into it. This is kind of like good to go for making blocks. It's like I would only add one more thing to it. But again, a big bag like this, I just bought a big bag like this. I think it was $55 at my local garden center. This will fill my wheelbarrow like 1.5 times. It's a lot of mix. Some sort of bagged compost is fine. Why do I like bagged compost? It's because it's already been pre-sifted. And when I design a class like this, I could be teaching it to diehards, but I know that plenty of people are busy like me, and you're not going to be like sifting your soil to like get it so that it doesn't clog up stuff. I know, but you're one of the special people. It's okay. So yeah, and though it is cathartic to do sifting. I love that, but anyway, so like worm castings. So this is like one simple set of boom, 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 3 ingredients, a general potting mix. It doesn't have to be this brand. All right, this is your bulk. Something that adds stickiness to it. Compost adds stickiness to it so the blocks don't fall apart. And it also retains water and moisture and everything. Okay, and then some sort of fertility that is a little bit long-term to give it just like a little more boost. And again, there's like so many brands and everything that are out there. Boom, boom, boom. This is like another mix. Those 3 ingredients could also be used to make your own little like soil fertility, and that's what Elliot Coleman uses. This is everything in words. This is the mix. So again, I mix in there, then I dump stuff in here, and this is it in pictures. This is the ratios. Everybody, you got the ratios? These are buckets. So parts, it's a parts. If I were to do 4 or 6 parts of that mix put into like buckets, there's buckets. You know what a bucket is. Okay, so then I might use one bag of that, or really like a bag or a half a bag. Oh no, that's a bucket. That's a bucket as well. So it's parts. 1, 2, 3, 4 parts of this, 1 part of that. And for that amount of volume, that amount of buckets that would fit in a wheelbarrow, I would do 1 cup of a general fertilizer. And this brand that I'm showing you here is a certified like organic fertilizer. When you look at the ingredients, it's like feather meal and manure and stuff like that. It's from the poultry industry many of the times. But there are other forms out there. Okay, so yes, this is the slides of like, these are all of the types of things that could be your bulk mix. I just discovered this one. I have it in the car. I didn't bring it. We're short on time. But that one's made with coconut coir, which is more sustainably harvested than all the peat moss stuff. So I'm excited that something's on the market like that. Okay, these are all your bulk mixes. Okay, coconut coir like this, if you were to buy it like this, you can buy it like this. It's a pain in the butt to work with because you have to soak it, it has to expand. I like to buy it in mixes. Okay, we're gonna skip past. So read the handouts. This is all stuff later in the handouts. Okay, composty stuff. Worm castings count as composty stuff. They're sticky, okay? So I'm just giving you different ideas of things that you could get off the shelf. Could you use your own compost? Absolutely. Mushroom compost, there you go. Okay, and again, stuff is linked. when I say 1 cup of this stuff, these are other examples of products that are out on the market that are like ready to go, ready to go, ready to go. You can look at these. Oh, and that's the advanced one. We got to move on. Boom, 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 boom. Okay. Set alarms to water. Oh yeah, I don't know. That's what I always teach. Put alarms to check on your plants early, check on them late, because you got phones. Everybody's got a phone, right? When the blocks are small, I water with a little mister like that. So I don't know if you've ever thought to do that, because if you're in your house, you don't want a hose, you know, and you may want to take them outside and give them a good thorough watering, but this tends to be something where I can pump it, give it like a little light misting, and then I'm not over watering stuff. And this type, this is the industry standard for watering. This was my high school job at Hart's Greenhouse. Just to go around and water the plants. You're a plant, okay, and you're a plant, and you're a plant, and you're a plant, and you're a plant. Except I'd be watering your roots. All right, Dave would get mad at me if I watered the leaves. All right, because he could be encouraging fungal growth.
Question.
Hanging plots and soil blocks. So yes.
On the watering, if you're using the plastic tray
Yes.
and the protective tray underneath, do you
Take
water,
the
or
whole.
you just
Take the slotted tray out. If I was going to water with this, I would take the slotted tray out, put it outside of
your basin?
the spray one.
Yeah.
The spray one, I'd water it just as it is. Lift the top up,
From the top.
spray, and then put it. Yeah, you know, I know what you mean. You're going with the watering from underneath route.
Yeah, I'm just wondering, does the blocks fall apart? Or?
No, I wouldn't say that they fall apart, but having that amount of water underneath is, with most people, can be a negative thing where it encourages fungal growth, too much moisture within the system. Okay. So again, like that's where I tend to not, with beginners, I'm like, who may not be able to dial in all of the variables, I wouldn't do watering from underneath. Okay. Yeah. Again, I know where you're going with that. Okay, let's make. Where we go? Okay. So yeah, there's further reading that you can do. Then this is just, okay, yeah. Picnic table, making blocks with my daughter and seeding them. They go in the greenhouse, and look how everything's kind of closed up, and they get a little tight. And time goes on, they're growing. All right, now I still had some plastic culture stuff going in this picture. But yeah, you know, just as time goes on, this is what I grew and, you know, ran my farm on, was like these little soil blocks, okay? And then you get ones like this, where like the whole thing, just like, that's a failed set of germination. Bad seed, it's okay. And so, you know, that one's another one where it's like failed germination. So, you know, you get good, okay, okay. Let's make stuff, right? Because I want to be respectful of time. Da-da-da. You can ask questions while I set up. Any questions? Yes. My little child's garden hoe. It works. All right. So it's like TV, folks. I already have like a blend that has compost in it. Yes. Okay. Now, ideally, I'd be at home and I'd have, you know. Oh yeah, you got feet. You can stand. Let's go for it. I love quick connects and a shut off here. At home, I would be taking this and I'd be like, shh, you know, and like letting it mix, you know, letting the water mix in. Here, I got a bucket of water. Okay, show us you're gonna get okay, bucket of water. I gotta eyeball this, okay? So it's very easy to like do too much water. I said I was gonna use the garden hoe, but then I decided to use this. So, all right, part of this is a little bit of patience. You see how I'm not even mixing in this? I'm reserving some dry, just in case I need it. And I'm also reserving some dry here in case I need it. Now, there's a temptation to just like go at it. But I know that soil is like a little bit dry. I just want to give it like a little chance. I did pre-wet it, but I just want a little chance for some of that moisture to work its way in. Let's see. Mini blocks? Okay. The mini blocks with this, it would kind of be, it'd be a little tough. This mini blocks are where I might break out the sifter, some sort of like little mesh. Or but it's probably gonna end up working with this. General method with this is like a back and forth motion, and each time, so that's fast, each time I'm kind of scooping and then pushing, scooping and then pushing, or I'm pushing away and then scooping back, pushing away and scooping back. What happens is you tend to pack the cells, but there's this hump here. So I want to press that hump in, and as I'm pushing down and going side to side, do you see how I kind of like wore that down and pressed it? And so, all right, acceptable. Ooh, okay. Oh, I made a mess, okay. So next size, so, okay. So as you change sizes, it's like, you just have to figure out like what rhythm works for you. I've had kids do this and they're holding this and they're trying to do the blocks. You just took it, okay, all right, so you're adults, you know, but my hands go here. And so I tend to do a side-to-side motion, like this. So not front to back. So I kind of end up packing one edge, packing the other edge. And then like this like last one, I can feel that there's like, a little hump of soil. So that's where I'm kind of like giving some downward pressure and scraping. And then those, yeah, okay. Ta-da!
That's pretty wet, right? Do you want it
So,
that wet?
see, that's the thing. Yeah, it's kind of like oatmeal. It's a little bit like oatmeal. And as I'm pressing them out, we got like water that pools up here, and that's where having some dry to mix in. Sometimes I'm taking this and I'm like re-mixing in some dry to pull up that moisture, because you'll get a pool of water, and then if they're like too soupy, so this one I'm putting it right into that soupy mix to press them out, because I know that like, I mean, it still kind of held. This one didn't. That one didn't. Oh yeah, this is perfect for kids and adults alike, right? Okay. You had that one friend that you like convinced to eat stuff when you were a kid? Yeah. Okay. So like with this, there's a certain amount of like firmness. So you see how much water is in that block. I put a seed in it and I cover it. I'll just take some of this and just, cover the seeds. Maybe give it a little pat, over the whole tray and everything. But I won't really have to water that tray for quite some time because of how moist these are. And as the blocks are drying, they actually start to really hold. I'm not saying dry. You don't want them to be like those clay pots back there at all, because you're trying to grow living things inside of them. So as they dry, they do firm up a little more, and then they can definitely take a hit with, not a garden hose, but a rain head like that. Cool. So, little bigger. Oh, let's do you guys know you want to see it, right? You want the minis? We want the minis. It's not the best, but, and then this size. Sometimes. Yeah.
That's the idea, right?
Yeah. Or some plants will need to be in the blocks a little longer before they go outside. So like a tomato plant, I know it's going to be grown inside for quite some time, and it's going to develop a canopy. And that canopy, you don't want necessarily to touch some of these other blocks. So we might grow them like this. We might grow them like this, but then in the trays, actually pull the blocks apart and give them a little more space. Or, okay, there's the magic of like, oh, I got my tomato plant. Do you guys believe me now? Okay. And then it's like, it's soil to soil contact. It's soil to soil contact. So the roots from that little mini block. Yeah, love it. Okay, do you guys see the passion? Are we gonna do this stupid one? I hate this one. I hate it. It's, all right, there's the amount of volume that it takes to fill this. You're gonna like, you're gonna have to like, get the beeper out and bleep me. No, it's not the worst. So here's the thing. It's a number, this isn't that bad. But it's the third potting up, and it's like, okay, if I had a tray that had 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, if I had like 40 of these, I gotta make 40 of these? And that, yeah, right, this is where it's like a pain in the butt, and it's like, okay, so, but it's not the worst. I am gonna give a little squeeze, get the excess water a little bit out. There's a little vacuum underneath it, so I kind of slid it to break the vacuum. Isn't it? All right, I still got it, folks. Oh, yeah. Okay, so, and it's, again, it's one of those things where it generally holds its shape. $100. Library of things. Okay, so I got a couple minutes. I got dirty hands. All right, one of these, right? Right? Yes, no, yes. So if anybody actually like ends up getting one like this, the method for this is a little different. You know, posture's all different now. So now it's up. I've got some leverage, and I can actually like push. See the still the same like side to side motion. Front to back is just really hard to do. Side to side is easier. I have more leverage. I can kind of feel. I can feel when there's like a little hump of dirt underneath them. Not perfect, right? I missed some. They're not, oh, one fell out there. But you get the idea, right? And so, so seeding these. So if I was growing, let's see, what's one of the ones that all right, geraniums. Every now and then, I'll buy geraniums early on in the season, and I'll take my own little cuttings of the geraniums, and I'll dip them in a little rooting powder, take the little cuttings, put them in here, because that's how they make all the mums for you in the fall. That was my job, was to go around and pinch off the little heads of all the geraniums and then take the little cuttings and dip them and dip them and dip them and then put them into all the little plastic culture cells, and then they'd grow, and then you pot them up and everything. But you can, yeah, so I will also buy stevia. You guys know stevia, the sweet leaf kind? The plants on their own are a little spendy, but you take little pinches off the top, and then it encourages sideways growth from it. But those like little trimmings, dip in the rooting hormone, put it in a little block, give it a little tuck, put it in the block, give a little tuck, hormone, put it in the block, give a little tuck, hormone, dip on that. And now, since those are like, these are one of those things where it's like when you're growing cuttings, man, they can be surprisingly easy to propagate new plants, especially those expensive like herbs and stuff, which that's how the pros are doing it. That's how the pros are getting all of those herbs to the greenhouses, is that somewhere down south, they're pinching and planting and potting them up, and then they ship them up here in box trucks. You can buy one of those plants up here, pinch it off, and start your own like little set, and then bring those herbs in the house. Basil you could do too, but basil is also pretty easy to start by seed. There's this balance. Stevia, really hard to start by seed. Basil, really easy to start by seed. So why bother doing cuttings? All right, so I think we did it. Rosemary, that's another one. Thank you. I love you. I think I want to respect time. We're right about there, huh?
Yeah, bravo. Thank you, Martin.
Oh, I was just cleaning my hands, but there you go.
As we set up for the next talk, if there are some questions now that you absolutely can't save to the end, feel free to ask while I set up for Allie's portion.
So if you have a failed germination, can you
Reuse the.
yeah,
That comes down to your own judgment.
Okay.
If you think that the failed germination was because of overwatering and you see stuff growing on the soil, I'd be like, nope, start fresh. If you think that if you're doing germination the next round with something else that's like really easy to start, like snow peas or sugar snap peas, that's one of those where it's like the soil doesn't even matter. They're gonna germinate no matter what, so maybe use the soil for something quick like that versus something precious like the tomatoes and the peppers and all those other ones. That's a good question. So I think overall, yeah. Overall, like that, 1.5 to 2 inch size block is a good size for the home grower to start with. The mini blocker is only if you're planning on doing seedlings that you want to pot up. I think everybody could kind of get away with just the one blocker that's like this size or the size up. I made a mess. We're good? All right.
Okay, so I'm the why behind growing your own food is so important, or I should say my presentation is the why. So we just went from the soil, we're gonna go really high level now to the other extreme. first of all, thank you. Thank you all for being here. And thank you, Ari, for inviting me, and certainly to the Mystic Noank Library. It's a pleasure to be here this evening. I'm going to start with some context about who I am and a little bit about my background and the course of my path within the food system. And then we'll go into further details around our industrial system. So the title of my talk today is The Industrial Food System, Catalyst of a Personal and Professional Journey. I grew up in Greenwich. I went through the Greenwich public school system. I studied psychology at Mills College, and soon after that went on to be a chef. And my entry point into the culinary world was through food and healing. And through high school and my first year in college, I was very unhappy in my body, and I struggled with that. And subsequently, under the guidance of a nutritionist, went through a 3-week vegetable cleanse. And that experience changed my relationship, not only to my body, but to food. And more or less kind of never went back to the kind of mainstream, I hate to use the word junk food, but for lack of a better term, standard food. And so the transformation within my body and in my diet and eating really catalyzed my love for cooking, the medicinal properties of food and herbs and nature. And I studied at the Natural Gourmet Cookery School in Manhattan and pursued various different workshops on herbs and gardening and farming and composting. And I was very captured by the natural world and food and cooking included. I moved to San Francisco in my early 20s, where I was a private chef and caterer and worked in different restaurants. In my early 30s, about a decade later, I moved to Marin County, where I co-founded Savory Times. And then another decade later, in my early 40s, moved back to Greenwich, where I grew up 24 years later, and became the founding member of various different sustainability initiatives within my community and the Food Shed Network, which we'll talk about a little bit later. And so I designed this presentation really to be both educational, but also somewhat personal, starting with sort of a food systems 101. And then, as I said, I'll touch on my path. And I think the integration between my personal and professional is because, first of all, they're obviously very interconnected, given food is something we all have to interact with and survive by. But my professional journey was really sort of a creative response to a system that is really wrought and heavy and very challenging. And so I thought my path and sharing the creativity would sort of elevate the presentation a little bit, and I certainly hope it does. So I want to start with some definitions, like basic definition of our food system, and I'm just gonna read it because it's a little clunky. The food system encompasses the entire range of activities, people, and resources, and their interlinked value-adding activities involved in the production, aggregation, processing, distribution, consumption, and disposal of food products. The food system spans the activities, people, and resources involved in getting food from field to plate, from agriculture through nutrition and beyond. Along the way, it intersects with aspects of public health, culture, society, policy, and the environment. So pretty much every aspect of our lives. A food shed is the area of land and waters within a region from which food is produced in order to deliver nutrition to a population. And so I was asked to speak on the industrial food system, and that's a very big and complicated and very complex topic, and certainly very difficult to distill in 45 minutes. And so what I'm going to present to you today is really a high-level analysis, really to get you thinking deeper, if you're not already, to start thinking about it at all, but then also to start thinking about it a little bit deeper and possibly further engage in the food system. It sounds like a lot of you are gardeners and grow your own food, and maybe you go to market, maybe you compost, but in any case, I hope this inspires you to dive a little bit deeper. And I want to preface also what I'm going to talk about is when you look closely at our food system, it's painful and quite heavy and uncomfortable. And you know, the lens through which I do my work, and I know the lens through which this series has been designed, is really through racial justice, through food justice and equity. And it's hard because something that is so nurturing and pleasurable as the life-sustaining sustenance that we all really depend is truly produced in a way that does harm and has done since its inception. And these are hard conversations to have, and yet it's truly critical that we do, that we move past that and find ways to commit to better practices. The other thing I think is really important to say is we're always going to live within the context of a global system. Trade has been around for a millennial. We're not going to stop trade. And at the same time, it's also important to hold gratitude for what we do have, and that this is not about polarizing our system. It's not about good and bad. It's not about bad food and good food. It's not about good practices, bad practices. It's about holding the tension between the two. And then, as Mark eloquently said, about making choices that really best serves you and your family and your environment. And I think the other important contextual thing is to talk about what transformation means. You know, transformation obviously means many things for different people, but in my mind, it's really about going deeper than just change. We're talking about really getting to the systemic root of issues, and to truly let go of what doesn't work and allow for something to emerge that's something new and certainly much better off. So, starting way back, I'm going to go way back to the 17th century. Between our 17th and 19th century, the founding of the industrial agriculture is predicated on land theft from indigenous tribes and chattel slavery, which is obviously the involuntary importation of African Americans. And the reason that's important is it ensued generational trauma that continues today for both indigenous and Black communities, and is truly this legacy that is embedded in our food system and persists today. In the early 20th century, more than half of the American population were either farmers or lived in rural communities. Farms were diversified, skills were wide-ranging, farmers had autonomy over their own crops and their animals. Over the span of the 20th century, industrialization radically transformed how the vast majority of food was produced, and over this span, agriculture went through the greatest change since it was adopted thousands of years ago. So American farms have decreased over the decades, and that trend continues. The 2022 agricultural census that just came out shows that there's a 7% decline, while farmland consolidation is on the rise. And so this tyranny of get big and get out certainly still dominates the discourse today, and I'll touch on that further in a little bit. And the most disheartening statistic that was found within this census is the 2017 and 2022, or between 2017 and 2022, the number of Black producers fell by 8%, which is slightly higher than the overall rate of farm loss. And again, I'll touch on that. So what I kind of crafted here for you, and I'm going to go into some detail about this. Again, this is like big, heavy stuff, and I don't want to drag us all in the weeds. I'm happy to revisit it at the end if you have questions about it. But I've crafted here some of the, when we talk about the arc of the industrial system, these are significant markers. It's not everything, it's not all inclusive, but these are really the significant markers to note, starting with genocide of Native American populations, which is truly what is referenced within the food justice movement as land theft. And then the enslavement of African Americans, which again, within the food justice movement, led to land loss. And those two terms are used, not necessarily interchangeably, but used within the context of really the origin of agriculture and our food system. 1930s brought in the Dust Bowl, which was a huge part, and I'll touch on that in a minute. The Green Revolution is really where we can do a deep dive, which again, I won't kind of necessarily put you all through that, but the Green Revolution is really where the industrialization of our food and farming culture really settles in. And a lot of big terms here, but that's when we start seeing specialization, mechanization, chemical and pharmaceutical inputs, consolidation of farms, market concentration, and then what we're seeing more and more today is the corporatization of farmland. So starting with land access, land theft and loss, I think probably what the statistic that kind of captures that very clearly is that 98% of the farmers throughout the United States are white, or I should say farmland that is owned are 90% white. And that actually statistic is true in Connecticut, interestingly enough, it's 98%. The loss of farmland for Black farmers happened obviously over several decades, hundreds of years, but mostly through the USDA practices such as withholding access to credit, loans, capital, that go into obviously sustaining farms and property, and that led to the inability to pass on wealth to future generations. And as we all know, families accrue wealth through owning property and passing it on to their children. Obviously, the Great Migration, redlining, and other systemic discriminatory practices had a huge role. The USDA by no means is the sole source, but it was very, very significant for farmers. The Dust Bowl was somewhat of a wake-up call, and again was caused by a combination of natural and human factors and severe drought. But farming practices were a big primary cause of that, and then many people went hungry and were displaced from their land and their home. And then we touch in on the Green Revolution in the 1930s. So Dust Bowl's 1930s, Green Revolution 1940s. And I'm just going to kind of touch on a few points here. And again, if we want to go back to revisit it, I'm happy to. Post-World War II, countries around the world were struggling to feed an exploding populations, right? So our population growth exponentially, and we needed to kind of figure out how to feed people. And this is when we see an influx of science and technology. In Mexico, engineered seeds were originated, and the 1960s, that mechanization went into Asia with new wheat and rice varieties, resulting really in the Green Revolution. And this is complex and nuanced, and I don't necessarily, as I said, need to go into too much detail about that. But in a lot of interest, what I found doing this research, interestingly, is that there was a fight, again, for communism during the Cold War. And the idea was that where hunger goes, communism follows. And so there was this sort of movement within science that anything to prevent hunger. So let's see, technology transferred across science and farmers. This is when we saw dams and infrastructure to sort of foster, big production of food. In India, it was hugely successfully, plants were grown. There was a lot of success in growing plants because there was plenty of water and fertilizer. In Asia, we saw the production of rice, which doubled. And we start to see a real dramatic change in the way food was produced and consumed. Large industrial farms began to replace small organic farms. Large equipment and engineered seeds began to be introduced into the food system, and the idea was that science could solve the problem, and that millions of people would stave off from starvation. However, this big production really began to, it wasn't sustainable, and so the population surpassed the resources available to sustain it, which is what we're seeing today. Growing lots of food requires a ton of water. It degrades the environment. It led to monocultures, so there was less diversity, and so more food doesn't necessarily eliminate, poverty and starvation. It's really about distribution. The specialization of crops is, diversified crops gave way to genetically uniform monocrops. The mechanization of growing food, so sowing seeds, harvesting crops, milking cows, all of that gave way to the mechanization. And between 1900 and 2000, the U.S. agricultural workforce declined from 41% to 2%. We saw an influx of chemicals and pharmaceutical inputs, so the use of synthetic fertilizers and chemical pesticides. And then we saw the consolidation of food in the 1970s. Secretary Earl Butz is famously known for get big or get out. Government policies really encouraged farmers to scale up their operations, and they were very much motivated by the economies of scale. And then we obviously saw that leads to market concentration. So what we're seeing today are small number of companies that have given way to big, large market share of the industry. So smaller and smaller companies have a larger access to the share of an industry. And so what does all of this mean, right? So obviously the dominant system has fostered a real disconnect with our food, and where food is grown and how food is grown, how it's produced. We have been disconnected from how to cook and to grow and how to preserve our food. And we've also lost an intuitive knowledge on really like how to eat well. And so we have a little sense of seasonality and localization and regionalization, and food rarely tells the story of place the way it once did. And I think it's also really important to note here is that this isn't about like individuals, right? That this is really, as I just kind of in a very clunky way, tried to articulate that this is really about a systemic issue that has been designed for many decades. And so it's not about, again, anyone's like fault or being, blaming, but it's really about, as I said, an exploitive system that prioritizes efficiency and scale and profit rather than really nourishing everyone equally. So there's a lot of environmental factors that go into our industrial system here. 30% of global greenhouse gases, 70% of freshwater use, 80% of land conservation. It's responsible for $12 trillion a year in damage to people and planet. So it's obviously a big financial loss. And at the same time, we depend on biodiversity and water and soil to support agriculture. racial inequity, economic disparities, health disparities, rural poverty. These are all interconnected. And the other thing that's important to note here is that the food system is really systems nested in systems, right? So we have our mainstream global system. That's the supermarket that most of us go to, where we can find large-scale organic food and anything from hyper-processed food to commercially raised. We typically don't know who's grown it or where it was, where its origin is. Another nested system is the sustainable food system, which is our farmers markets and our CSA and more of our local economy. And then the food assistance system, which is our SNAP and WIC and free and reduced lunch and food pantries and kitchens. And then there's the food justice movement, which was probably touched on last week, I would say. But these are movements that have been in play and led mostly by the people who are most impacted by our food system. And they leverage policy by really, shifting systemic models. And these are organizations such as La Campesina for peasant farmers, the Immokalee Workers, Heal Food Alliance, Cultivating Justice, which is based here in Connecticut, the Northeast Farmers of Color, Black Farmer Fund, mutual aid organizations such as Bridgeport. So these are all organizations that are working in response to our industrial system. And so now I'm going to sort of switch over to the more personal side here and talk about what my response has been and how I designed my career and intentionally chose to use my culinary skills and my love for food and farming to really commit to food justice and as a way to really counter our industrial system. So I founded the Food Shed Network in 2020. And we advance, as Ari eloquently said, we advance food system transformation so that people on the earth can thrive. And we do that by connecting and educating and advocating and network weaving. And network weaving to inspire the investment in a resilient food shed and a just and equitable food economy so that everyone has access to nourishing local food. So essentially, I'm kind of created a space in my community where this conversation can be held. And I do that in a couple of ways. I have a few different programs. One is the Food Shed Forum, which is a partnership between the Food Shed Network, which is my umbrella organization, and the Greenwich Conservation Commission. And it is a multifaceted educational and convening platform that is geared towards bridging food system components and initiatives throughout Fairfield County. So our goal is to integrate and amplify community-based organizations by strengthening the connections between thought leaders and promote ways to introduce and educate change makers such as yourself. So essentially we're building bridges, flip the slide, we're building bridges and making connections, building relationships around a more just food system. Second program is Greenwich Food Alliance. That's an amalgamation of stakeholders within Greenwich, educators, businesses, agencies, community members, nonprofit organizations. And we're served mostly as a community of practice where we come together and share resources and kind of discuss what's working well, what might not be working well, and how we can leverage each other's work. And then the third is a resource library, which I think actually one of them is 30 ways to be a food systems change maker. So that actually might be relevant to this group if anyone's interested in looking at that. And that is an open access library of resources, everything from articles to podcasts, change makers here in Connecticut, food system thought leaders. And so the next element here is, so I've identified marker initiatives. So the marker kind of transformative points in the industrial system are kind of points to note. And as I said, anyone can go back and do a deeper dive into that. And these is what I've identified, and again, this is not an exclusive list by any means, but what I've identified as levers for change. And so, for me, and within the food justice movement, and certainly within my work, is really understanding the solutions are rooted in community, which again I'm sure was discussed last week, and that really truly for change to advance, the solutions must be really led by those who are most impacted. And so it's really about supporting the initiatives that already exist and putting attention and resources into that. And yes, big problems often take big solutions, but those solutions really have to be rooted in community. And the path forward really has to benefit and serve everyone. And so when we talk about policy, this is the first lever here. Policy is really about shifting power and resources and funding away from, sort of more the big corporate entities into regional diversified farms. Land access and water, access to land and water. Again, it was probably discussed, or if it hasn't been already, but access to farmland, and I'm sure Mark can speak to this, is very challenging in Connecticut, and it's expensive. There is a lot of competition from developers. We have a lot of issues. I mean, land use is obviously a very significant one, and so access to land and also access to our waterways. Connecticut is a coastal state, and often there are barriers to just accessing, the Long Island Sound is a huge food source, but not always easy to attain as a food source. Entrepreneurship is obviously a big lever for pathways towards a more just and equitable food system. That takes infrastructure, which again we are lacking. Our infrastructure kind of went by the wayside during the Industrial Revolution. That's one of its impacts, right? So we've kind of lost our mills and our commercial kitchens and our processing facilities and all that it takes to process food. And again, I'm sure Mark could probably, certainly speak to this better than I. But our infrastructure to build those added value products are few and far between, and part of rebuilding and repairing and restoring our food system is really through entrepreneurship. And with that, as I said, is more infrastructure. The farmers market is a huge lever for a just food system and access. Having said that, it's important that farmers markets accept SNAP and our WIC accessible, and that it's obviously located in a place that people can access. Urban farms and community gardens, Farm to School initiative. Connecticut has an extraordinary Farm to School collaborative that has done really incredible work to really, to catalyze the Farm to School movement here in Connecticut, including policy levers. Mutual aid, more and more we're beginning to see mutual aid initiatives. Bridgeport is one, founded by Reggie St. Colin out of Bridgeport. It's an open access refrigerator. They partner with different food rescue initiatives such as Food Rescue US, and that food is brought to the refrigerator, and the refrigerator is open, no questions asked, to anyone who needs food. School meals for all. Again, Connecticut has a very robust movement here in the state. It's led by End Hunger Connecticut. Lucy Nolan is the policy director, and she's done an extraordinary job building a coalition. The school lunch program is a safety net for families who are struggle with food insecurity, and for parents to know that their child is going to be fed a hot meal every day is very significant. And having said that, universal meals is right now we only have universal breakfast. We're working on universal lunch, but before the universal breakfast is before our legislation right now. We worked on that last year. It did not go through. Universal breakfast did. And so given this is a short session, we've asked that we just sustain the funding for universal breakfast, and next year we'll revisit the universal lunch. And happy to go into that more detail, but there's some complexity there. And then we're also seeing pay what you can models surface. Forage Works, I believe, is the name of an initiative out of Hartford, where there is open, where the restaurants are, there is a restaurant that is open to all incomes. And they have a certain, pay grade that is understood, and people are welcome to come in and dine. So I'll just quickly, before I sort of transition to Savory Times and then bring this talk to a close, the vision, and it's important when we're talking about any sort of change and a just transition, if you will, and moving through transformation is to have a vision, right? It's like, what is this? Where are we going? And what do we want to see? And so I've crafted one, but I've often thought it would be just a wonderful exercise to do that in community, to co-create a vision together. The vision that I've designed is we envision a food system that equitably nourishes everyone and functions as a regional food and farming culture rooted in relationship, meaningful story, and a sense of place. But again, I think we can only realize this if it's shared and something that we all can relate to. And then I'll just close with the initiative that I founded. This is kind of like stepping back a couple of decades at this point. Is Savory Times. And so in my early 30s, I was presented with an opportunity to be a private chef in Marin County. And I had been living in the Mission District of San Francisco and really needing a change. And so I accepted this invitation, and it really changed the trajectory of my professional landscape. And so I co-founded Savory Times. It was a philanthropic initiative that provided fully supported and thoughtfully designed events for artists and nonprofit organizations, mostly grassroots social environmental organizations. And we basically provided a platform for artists and activists to showcase their mission and talent. And our menus told a story of place and people. They were seasonal, they supported a local food economy, and I had the privilege of knowing all the producers that grew the food for my menus, and was able to go to the farmers market and support independently owned artisans and producers. And I'm just going to close here with kind of a final statement is we have the power to be food systems change makers. That's sort of, our theory of change. And I say the we by way of, in whatever way that is relatable to you and that feels accessible to you. There are many, many ways to participate in a just and equitable food system. I always say the first step is to understand the gravity of our industrial system. And as I didn't want to kind of overload, because it's, as I said, it's very, difficult what it's doing to our environment and our health and well-being. But to really understand and be honest with that, and then to begin to look to the solutions. And the solutions are creative. They're rooted in relationship and connection. There is beauty there, there is connectivity there, And I think it's why I do this work. I believe it's the bedrock of our culture and who we are is really the path through food and through land. So, and that is why, it's actually, quite, this has been designed very well, and I really, appreciate, being here, is because it's these really grassroots, tangible projects that are so important, and they're not always easy. It's not always easy going to the farmer's market on a rainy Saturday morning, but it is everything to that farmer. You can go to the supermarket and that money just sort of gets lost into the pocket of an investor somewhere very far away. But if you're going to that farmer's market on the Saturday morning and it's raining and you're like that makes a big difference, not only for that farmer, but to our whole food economy, to your health, to your well-being, to our culture. So thank you for listening.